What do a philosopher, a conqueror, a mathematician, and a king have in common? Not just names carved in stone, but lives that bent the course of history. In this journey, we travel across time. From the marble courtyards of Athens, to the blood-stained battlefields of Persia, through the cold alpine passes, into the heart of empires long gone. We'll meet Alexander, who dreamed beyond maps; Plato, who dared to define justice; Hannibal, who crossed mountains with elephants and fury; Pythagoras, who found harmony in numbers and stars; Trajan, who stretched Rome to its furthest breadth; Seneca, who held stillness in a world of chaos; Augustus, who turned a republic into peace; and Leonidas, who taught us that sometimes one final stand is louder than 1,000 victories. These are not just tales of war and wisdom. They are reflections of who we are and what we leave behind. So take a breath. Let the past speak. Because tonight, history comes alive. In a world where history often feels distant and frozen in time, we're bringing the past back to life. With the power of artificial intelligence, we're turning black and white portraits of legendary figures into vivid moving images, allowing us to see their faces not as statues or sketches, but as people who once breathed, dreamed, and shaped the world we live in today. Welcome to a journey through time. In this episode, we reawaken the memories of ancient icons, from the brilliance of Greek philosophers to the might of Roman emperors and the courage of forgotten warriors. Watch as the face of Alexander the Great comes alive, the young Macedonian king who carved one of the greatest empires in history and spread Hellenistic culture across continents. Gaze into the thoughtful eyes of Plato, who laid the foundations of Western philosophy and imagined a just society still debated today. Feel the intensity of Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who defied Rome with war elephants and unmatched strategy. These are not just stories from dusty textbooks, they are echoes of real lives, real decisions, and real legacies. And now, with every blink and breath recreated through AI, we're reminded that history is not just about the past. It lives, it moves, and it speaks if we know how to listen. So, come closer. The whispers of yesterday are calling. Long before skyscrapers pierced the sky, before the hum of machines filled the streets, there was a man who sat beneath the olive trees of Athens and asked, "What is justice?" His name was Plato. A thinker, a seeker, a voice echoing through time, Plato wasn't just another philosopher. He was the architect of thought, the mind behind ideas that still guide us today. Born in ancient Greece over 2,000 years ago, Plato was a student of Socrates and the teacher of Aristotle. But more than that, he was a builder, not of cities, but of visions. Visions of what a just society could be. Visions of truth, virtue, and the soul. He founded the Academy in Athens, one of the earliest institutions of higher learning in the Western world. Here, ideas weren't just debated, they were born, shaped, tested by fire, and passed from one generation to the next. His most famous work, The Republic, was more than just a book. It was a blueprint for a better world, one where rulers were wise, justice was sacred, and society was guided not by power, but by reason. But Plato didn't stop at politics. He delved into the deepest corners of human experience. What is real? What can we truly know? And is there something more beyond what we see? His philosophy of ideal forms, that there is a perfect, eternal version of everything, challenged people to look beyond the material world and search for higher truths. Even now, his voice remains, in classrooms, in books, in quiet conversations under the stars. Plato never sought fame. He sought understanding. And in doing so, he gifted the world with a light that still flickers through the ages. Sit with him for a moment. Not in a marble hall, but in your mind. And listen. The questions he once whispered still wait to be answered. High in the frozen silence of the Alps, where snow drifts like whispers and the air bites with every breath, a caravan of soldiers presses forward. At their front is a man with fire in his eyes and vengeance in his heart. His name is Hannibal Barca. Born in Carthage, a powerful city across the sea from Rome, Hannibal was raised not with toys or tales, but with oaths. As a child, he swore before the gods to never be a friend to Rome. And he kept that promise, not with words, but with war. What made Hannibal legendary was not just his hatred for Rome, but how he brought war to its doorstep. He did the impossible. He led a massive army, including war elephants, across treacherous rivers, unforgiving mountains, and into the heart of enemy territory. The journey across the Alps remains one of the greatest military feats in human history. He didn't come to defend. He came to conquer. At Cannae, Hannibal orchestrated a battle so perfectly executed that it is still studied in military academies to this day. With fewer soldiers, he encircled and annihilated a Roman force nearly twice the size. It was brilliance. It was bloodshed. It was history in motion. But glory is often fleeting. Despite his early victories, Rome adapted. Hannibal was eventually forced to retreat, and Carthage fell into ruin. Yet even in defeat, his name lived on, whispered by generals, feared by empires, remembered by time. Hannibal was more than a commander. He was strategy given form, a symbol of defiance, and a man who dared to cross the impossible to fight the inevitable. And in every clash of armies, in every bold maneuver on a battlefield today, a piece of him still marches. Before formulas filled schoolbooks and before equations defined the world, there lived a man who believed that numbers held the key to the universe. His name was Pythagoras. To most, he is remembered for a single theorem, a simple rule about right triangles. A superscript 2 plus B superscript 2 equals C superscript 2. But to reduce him to just that would be like calling the ocean just water. Pythagoras was more than a mathematician. He was a philosopher, a mystic, and a seeker of truth who saw harmony not just in music or math, but in all things. Born in ancient Greece, he traveled widely, from Egypt to Babylon, searching for knowledge. And when he returned, he brought with him something deeper, a vision of a world made of patterns, a universe where everything, stars, sounds, even the soul, could be understood through numbers and proportion. He believed that the essence of life was harmony, and that just as a string plucked at the right length could create a perfect note, so too could a life lived in balance create something beautiful. His teachings gave rise to a brotherhood, part school, part spiritual society, where knowledge, self-discipline, and silence were sacred. In his world, mathematics wasn't just science, it was a bridge to the divine. Pythagoras also saw connections between the cosmos and music. He explored how vibrations and ratios could explain the motion of planets, the rhythm of the seasons, even the breath of the human soul. Though much of his life remains a mystery, his influence echoes through time, in classrooms, in symphonies, and in every moment we seek balance. He didn't just ask what the world is. He asked why it sings. And maybe, just maybe, when the night is quiet, if you listen closely, you'll hear that harmony he spoke of. The eternal music of the spheres. In the heart of ancient Rome, where marble gleamed and legions marched, rose a man whose name would be etched into stone. not just for his conquests, but for the empire he helped shape. His name was Trajan. He wasn't born into luxury, nor raised in the shadow of palaces. He came from the provinces, Hispania, far from Rome's beating heart. And yet, through strength, skill, and quiet command, he rose to wear the purple robes of emperor. Under Trajan's rule, the Roman Empire reached its greatest territorial extent, stretching from the deserts of the Middle East to the cold frontiers of Britannia. He led his legions across the mighty Danube during the Dacian Wars, where fierce resistance met the discipline and might of Rome. But Trajan was not just a conqueror of lands. He was a builder of legacies. He filled Rome with monuments and marvels, forums, markets, roads, and aqueducts. But perhaps his most enduring gift is Trajan's column, a towering scroll of stone, wrapped in carved scenes that tell the story of his campaigns. It still stands today, nearly 2,000 years later, a silent sentinel of Roman glory. Trajan was also admired for something rare in rulers: restraint. He governed with fairness, expanded with purpose, and earned the love of both the military and the Senate, no small feat in an age of political bloodshed. So beloved was he that every Roman emperor after him would hear the words, "May you be luckier than Augustus and better than Trajan." And though time has weathered the empire he once ruled, his name still commands respect. Not just for the wars he won, but for the vision he built. Trajan reminded the world that true greatness is not measured only in battles fought, but in the stone you leave behind, and the peace you leave within. He lived in a world of power and shadows, where emperors whispered and blades glinted behind every curtain. Yet even in the heart of Roman politics, Seneca chose to be a philosopher. Born into privilege, he could have spent his days in comfort. But Seneca sought something deeper, a life of virtue, reason, and clarity. He became one of the most influential voices of Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches resilience, discipline, and the courage to face suffering with calm. He believed that true strength doesn't lie in wealth or position, but in mastering oneself. As an advisor to Emperor Nero, Seneca walked a dangerous path. He was trusted, respected, and feared. But as Nero's reign grew darker, so did the distance between their values. Seneca, who preached self-restraint and moral clarity, found himself beside a ruler descending into chaos. In time, suspicion crept in. Power turned against wisdom. And Seneca, once Rome's guiding mind, was ordered to take his own life. But even in death, he remained true to his beliefs. He faced the end as he had lived, calmly, deliberately, and with dignity. His final moments became a living example of the very philosophy he had long taught. That while we cannot control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. Seneca's writings endure, letters, essays, and thoughts that still speak to us across 2 millennia. He taught that life is brief, time is precious, and peace comes not from the world outside, but from the soul within. He didn't seek fame. He sought freedom, the kind that no emperor could grant or take away. And today, in quiet corners of thought, his words still echo. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. Before him, Rome was a republic torn by civil war, divided by ambition, haunted by betrayal. After him, it became an empire that would stand for centuries. His name was Augustus. But once, he was simply Octavian, the adopted son of Julius Caesar. He came to power not through fire and thunder, but through patience, intelligence, and the art of political survival. In a world where alliances were temporary and daggers hid behind smiles, Octavian rose carefully, deliberately, And when the dust of conflict finally settled, he stood alone, not just as a victor, but as the first emperor of Rome. Under Augustus, the Republic quietly became an empire. But what he gave in return was something Rome hadn't known in generations: peace. The Pax Romana, a golden age of stability, prosperity, and progress, began with him. Roads stretched across continents. Trade flourished. Cities rose. The arts blossomed. And from the heart of the empire, a new vision of Rome radiated outward. Augustus wasn't just a ruler, he was a reformer. He restructured the government, strengthened the military, and reshaped the economy. He led not with fear, but with a careful balance of power and persuasion. He knew when to act and when to remain silent. Monuments were built in his honor, but his true legacy was the system he left behind, strong enough to survive long after his death. He ruled not like a god, but like a man who understood men, their hopes, their fears, and the fragile nature of peace. And when he died, the empire didn't collapse. It endured for centuries. Augustus proved that true greatness isn't always loud. Sometimes, it speaks in the quiet after the storm. In the calm that follows chaos. He found Rome made of brick, and left it clothed in marble. In the narrow pass of Thermopylae, where cliffs meet sea and the earth seems to tremble beneath marching feet, a small army stood in the face of an empire. At its head was Leonidas I, king of Sparta. He was not the strongest man on the battlefield, nor the loudest. But in his silence, there was steel. In his stance, there was defiance. For Leonidas knew what was coming, not just death, but a moment that would echo through eternity. In 480 BCE, the Persian king Xerxes brought an army hundreds of thousands strong to invade Greece. And yet, at this narrow gateway to the Greek heartland, only a few thousand men, including just 300 Spartans, stood in his way. They did not expect victory. They came to make a stand. For 3 days, Leonidas and his warriors held the line. Shoulder to shoulder. Shield to shield. Each breath was a vow. Each drop of blood, a message. We will not run. We will not bow. They fought not for glory, but for duty. Not to win, but to inspire. And when betrayal revealed a secret path, and the enemy began to close in, Leonidas did not retreat. He dismissed the allies who remained and stayed with his 300, choosing death not as defeat, but as declaration. Their final stand bought Greece time. Their courage lit a fire that would one day consume empires. And though their bodies fell, their spirit rose. In stone. In song. In every soul that chooses bravery over fear. Leonidas didn't just fight the Persians. He fought the silence of history and won immortality. Because true kings do not rule forever. But some never truly die. They become legend. From the battle-scarred cliffs of Thermopylae to the silent chambers of Roman philosophers. From the visionaries who shaped ideas to the warriors who shaped empires. These were not just men of power. They were voices of their time. And their echoes still reach us. Alexander dreamed of a world without borders. Plato imagined a society ruled by wisdom. Hannibal defied the impossible. Pythagoras heard the universe sing in numbers. Trajan expanded a civilization. Seneca taught us how to live and how to die. Augustus turned chaos into peace. And Leonidas reminded us that courage sometimes means choosing to fall. They lived in different centuries, under different skies. But they all asked the same question. What will I leave behind? And the answer is this. Not stone. not empire, but memory. So as the music fades and the final image closes, remember this: history isn't past. It's breath, still warm, still waiting. Thank you for walking through time with us. We'll see you in the next chapter.